So, you asked us to watch the video regarding gun control based between four people who were debating. Okay. And so the question you asked was, to what extent do the participants in the discussion seem to be seeking better understanding of the issue, and to what extent they seem to be trying to defend their own position on the issue? So you can often see that them being reporters in the news um, like line of work, that you would need to have some give and take, but of course you're going to have your own side. So you could see that the four people participating definitely differed on this. You could tell that the main speaker, the man who spoke first by the name Joe, would take up a fair bulk of the debate. He would often say his points um, far more often than anybody else, and when somebody would try to step in, he wouldn't. He would not that he wouldn't let them, but he would allow them to talk, but then he would very quickly question them in I'd say like a doubtful way. Um, Now this isn't to say that they weren't understanding of each other necessarily, but it was kind of hard to tell if he was trying to gain the better understanding rather than just kind of brushing their idea aside because of what he thinks of it. There was an example where the third person to talk, his name was Nicholas, and he was talking about how there are hundreds of shootings every year, and how a way to stop this would be to put more like rigidity in the restrictions and laws behind buying guns. And so when he brought that point up, it was hard at first because he was cut off by Joe, and you could tell that he kind of had it on his face, like, okay, like I'll let you talk, I guess, you know. And so when Joe finally finished his point, and he was kind of rambling as well, he said the same point a couple times over, and Nick finally got to say his point. So right afterwards, Joe again went over. He was questioning what he was saying. He's like, "Look, how can we possibly change legislation? How can we do this? Like, like, how can we change anything if no one's gonna try?" And in that way, it wasn't out of any kind of um, I wouldn't say like I don't want to use the word competitive, but it was kind of in that, like, it wasn't. So he wasn't doing it out of power, like I'm gonna win this argument, but instead it was like, it was the opposite. He was kind of just like, he was aiding in the conversation and he was building it. But a lot of other times it was hard for other people to make a point across without him. I don't know, he was kind of mocking. It was very doubtful questioning. So going back to the question where you said, to what extent do they seem to seek a better understanding versus them trying to defend? You could see that Joe often wanted to defend his side rather than listen to the points others made, and I could kind of see it with other people as well. Mostly other people just listened. You could see the woman beside him. I think her name was Micah or Mika. Um, she would try to make a point, and he would kind of cut her off, and she'd be, you could tell she was a little annoyed. And so you could see that they're both very defensive of their positions. Um, the second question says, does their goal seem to defeat the argument of those whom they disagree, or do they want to achieve better understanding? So this goes back, of course, to what I was saying. So Joe and all them, they didn't. It's not that they didn't listen to each other, but they were definitely far more like defensive over what they were saying, and they weren't necessarily trying to bring each other down. But the questions that Joe constantly seemed to ask seemed kind of in that regard, that he wanted to defend his point more so. And in that way, he seemed to almost take them down with them. But ultimately, I'm pretty sure that everybody there just wanted to gain a bigger and better understanding of what everybody else had to say. And even though there was a little bit of mockery, there was a little bit of like side looks, little under the breath comments, I believe that they all did want to achieve a better understanding of both sides.